Yo, how's it going? The most hated comedian in the industry, Brendan Schaub. Um, yeah, Brendan Schaub is weird, man. I remember I was watching was critical as saying how Brendan Schaub was trying to sue another YouTuber because he slandered his name. Then there's a whole Bobby Lee thing. I mean, that guy is going through it. I do want to give his props for saving those that family in the fire, though. I mean, if I remember correctly, like the family got there was like a car crash or something similar like that, and Brandon Schaub actually saved these kids from save the kids and the mom, or I think the mom passed away in the accident, and I yeah, like just props to him in that situation, like because not many people will be able to think in like a super uh like in that type of situation, you wouldn't be able to think quick like that and be able to just immediately get the kids out, try and save as many people as you can. Some people freeze. So, yeah, I just want to give his props to that. The rest of the stuff is a different story, you could say.
Act of 1976. This is the most hated comedian in the industry. Not Joe Rogan, his buddy, Brendan Schaub. Brendan is a 39-year-old ex-football player, ex-UFC fighter turned podcaster and stand-up comedian. The combination of multiple concussions and speaking on podcasts for a living leads to a lot of misspeaking, terrible opinions, bad jokes, harassment, but also fame and fortune. Brendan worked his whole
Yeah.
life to be an athlete, be a fighter, but there's no doubt he got a shortcut to being a comedian. Turns out this shortcut has made for some very interesting controversy, shocking accusations, and deep internet lore that thousands of people actively contribute to daily. Today we are going to deep dive into the controversial rise of Brendan Schaub. Brendan has a history of false copywriting YouTube videos criticizing him. Brendan, if you're watching this, don't illegally take down my video. Just drink some water. There's
Oh,
an old saying,
I,
it's not
hey,
about what you know, it's about who you
it is
know.
what it
It
is.
turns out Brendan Schaub knows someone very popular, Joe Rogan. For the very few unaware, Rogan is the voice of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He has been the lead commentary panelist at the UFC since 2002. Brendan Schaub signed with the
Oh my
UFC in
gosh.
2009 after an impressive 4-0 semi-pro record and heavyweight championship victory in the Ring of Fire MMA League. Before he was a
Cool.
fighter, he was a fullback for the University of Colorado. He went undrafted in the 2006 NFL Draft, then signed to two different Arena Football League teams but never played a single game. I guess he was a better fighter than a ball player. In his
Mm.
UFC debut, he got his
Big
lights shut off by
country.
260-pound heavyweight Roy Nelson. After that, Brennan would go on to have an okay
I'll
UFC
just leave it
career.
like that.
After
It's fine.
4 straight victories via TKO, Brendan Big Brown Schaub was looking like the future heavyweight star the UFC needed. In 2011, he beat his idol, Mirko Cro Cop.
Oh my
However,
gosh.
he got beat up so badly in this fight despite winning that he knew the UFC wasn't his passion anymore, which led to his demise
Oof.
in the ring. Schaub lost 4 out of his next 6 fights.
That's a
His
tough
last loss
situation.
was so bad that Joe Rogan actually convinced him to quit.
There's a bridge between you and the very best guys in the world. And I don't know if you can cross that bridge.
May of 2014,
Yo,
Rogan was already a
that's a
5-year
legit.
veteran in the podcast world. His show is quite literally still the same now as it was then. He started a new segment called Fight Companion, where he would get a few of his buddies and watch the UFC fights while recording their reactions and
Yo, I loved Fight Companion. Fight Companion is literally one of my favorite. Well, back like used to be one of my favorite things ever. Like just getting some like some food and then just chilling and like just putting on Fight Companion. It's literally like best vibes I've ever had for myself. Like I miss this. I miss the Fight
conversations.
Companion.
The UFC only hires Joe to commentate on high-profile matches, but he loves watching fights because he's a fan before an employee. Schaub was the perfect guest for this series because he was a fighter. He knows a lot about the sport, he knows the mentality of a fighter before the event, during the event, and after. He knows
Yeah,
how it feels to
yeah.
knock someone out, to be on top of the world, to be knocked out, and be humiliated. On top of that, he knew some of the fighters personally and could provide even more insight. Brendan became a regular. The JRE community became fans of Brendan's company. They were excited for his upcoming fights, even though they knew he was past his prime. But after his loss against Travis Brown in December 2014, Joe had to speak up.
The reality of your skill set, where you at now, I don't see you beating the elite guys. There's a fluidity to their movement that you don't really have. There's shit that other people can do that you can't do. If you had a wrestling match with Cain Velasquez, how well do you think you do?
I think people would be surprised.
Really? You think so?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I think you'd be surprised.
Mm.
I really do. I think he'd fuck you up. The issue is, can you become a champion? If you can't become a champion, are you comfortable with getting knocked out 3 or 4 more times over the next 5 or 6 years?
Brendan didn't
Yo, that's a real friend. Because sometimes your ego can lead you into this like illusion of a world where you believe in yourself so much that you can't face certain realities of things. And Joe Rogan helped him, like, is kind of like telling him, like, yo, this is the reality of things. Like, I know you believe in yourself, you're that good, but there are just there's just another bridge, like you said, that are just full of better people, and I don't think you can, make it in the other side.
agree with Joe at the moment. He wasn't ready to accept the fact that he was not a high-level fighter. But Joe and his good friend Brian Callen were trying to convince him that he had other career options.
Whether or not you agree with that, what I care about is the fact that you have a future in other things and you're really good at. Like, you're really funny.
He say funny shit,
Dude, he comes up with every one of the fucking memes, it's ridiculous.
You say funny shit, man.
Yeah, you do. You have a ridiculous talent for that.
When you have two professional comedians telling you that you are funny, that maybe you should pursue a career in stand-up, that's a good sign. Brendan already had a successful sports/comedy show alongside Brian Callen that was hosted and produced by Fox, The Fighter and the Kid. With hundreds of thousands of people he was reaching online, it was clear that Brendan had a brighter future outside of the ring. All professional fighters have to face the ego-shattering decision to put down the gloves one day. You have to live with people calling you scared, a quitter, a pussy, even though they themselves would never step into the ring with another person. Luckily for Brendan, he turned it into a financial decision. Reebok signed an exclusive uniform deal with the UFC where fighters couldn't wear any other brand during the fight. Not a sponsored brand, not their favorite brand, not even their own brand. Some fighters would get as low as $2,500 per fight to wear Reebok gear.
This is where I feel like the UFC fucked up. Like, you know how much money there is in sponsoring, and for companies to approach you with a contract that could be just as lucrative as a UFC contract, like, there's so much money to be made there. And for them to sign this deal to Reebok that was just ridiculous to me. I feel like fighters are putting their life on the line, and they should have a say in what they do, and if they want to get sponsored, or if one represents a brand, then they should represent that brand that they want. I mean, I'm pretty sure boxers get like a lot of money for sponsorships on their shorts, and I mean, $2,500 per fight because you're getting sponsored by Reebok is ridiculous.
Higher profile fighters would get around $10,000 per fight to wear Reebok. I've made 6 figures in sponsorship in each of my last 6 fights. The 90% pay cut Brendan would have to take, on top of the inevitable knockouts and concussions he would receive by continuing a fighting career, just didn't make sense.
Yeah,
it took
big
about
time.
10 months to make it official, but in the 706th episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, he finally took Joe's advice and officially retired from MMA.
I got to step away from the game, man. I got to step away from the UFC for right now.
He pursued a stand-up career,
takes a lot of
opening
guts.
and doing small sets for his co-star Brian Callen. In 2016, he debuted his first solo performance at the Comedy Store in LA. The Fighter and the Kid had a falling out with Fox Sports for their show. The network wanted 50% of all the revenue earned on the show. They wanted to remove Brian Callen and make creative changes, including the notion that they should stop cursing.
That's like the whole thing about it, though. Like, Ryan Callen is hilarious. If the two like people hosting the show, the Fighter and the Kid, have good chemistry, just keep it the same way. Swearing, I mean, just keep it the same way. If it's genuinely and like people love it, like, why are you trying to ruin it? Why?
Obviously, that wasn't going to work, so they decided to go independent.
So we just decided to go our separate ways.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that Brendan funded the new studio, purchased all the cameras and equipment since podcasting was about to be his new career, whereas Brian had a stand-up comedy and acting career in full effect. With all this new free time and equipment, Brendan launched his own solo podcast called The Big Brown Breakdown, where he would mostly talk about MMA-related news with a guest. He was constantly on the Joe Rogan podcast, which was exploding to new heights. He was getting comedy spots next to 10, 15, 20-year veterans in the industry. He got a spot on Showtime, commentating and analyzing the massive Floyd Mayweather vs. Conor McGregor fight.
I hate this fight. I love Floyd Mayweather. McGregor is awesome too, but I just hated this fight. This fight made no sense to me. But yeah, like there was no competitiveness other than a Showtime. I hated this fight.
By mid-2017, he was doing solo stand-up tours. He already had a fan base from his podcast and affiliation with other comics, so he was doing shows with big crowds of people before ever proving himself as a funny comedian. His fame was reaching all-time highs. Brendan Schaub was the meathead best friend that's kind of dumb, definitely has CTE.
Hey, photographers, you blockbuster. Said they were talking about fraternity?
Fraternal.
But seems like a good guy.
True.
He didn't really add much to the conversation.
Got a dicey past in terms of the law.
Some
and
would say the diciest.
a rough reason for why.
The
you know,
roughest.
no.
Who knows?
It's fun.
It's
The
so,
roughest,
it's the
the
funnest.
diciest,
Yeah, it
it's
is
the
fun.
It's
funnest.
the best.
You feel like this is a dirty business. Like I don't want to be a part of your dirty
It's the
business.
dirtiest
These are
business.
Just add est to everything he says, huh, Brandon? Great insight, buddy.
But he was officially living his lifelong dream of becoming a comedian,
And my dream was to be a comedian. My heroes were Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler growing up.
which a lot of people say is just him trying to convince himself that he belongs in this space. However, when the rise to fame comes so quickly, there are bound to be some negatives. He was making some enemies online. In October of 2017, someone posted this on the Joe Rogan subreddit, a compilation of insufferable Brendan clips titled, "This is why nobody likes Brendan Schaub." The comment section formed a small community of people sharing their disdain for him. He started another podcast called
Oh
The
my
King and the
gosh.
Sting with Theo Von,
I love The
who
King
was
and Sting.
charming.
Theo Von, favorite comedians right now. Definitely favorite comedians. That dude is, like charming and just such a funny guy.
Likable, and a hilarious comedian. By the end
Yes.
of 2018, he owned and produced 3 very successful podcasts, was selling merch like crazy, friends with some of the biggest names in comedy after just 2 years. He released his first stand-up special on Showtime called You'd Be Surprised, and a lot of people were surprised at how unfunny he was.
It's out the biggest syringe you've ever seen in your life. Like it's out of a goddamn comic book. Goes, Mr. Schaub, after you numb your lip, you need many, many stitches. This be worst pain in your life, guaranteed. Worst pain in your life. Clearly, Jamal's a black dude. Gives a mean-ass haircut. This isn't gonna go well. I don't discriminate. This is gonna be sick. Let's do it, Jamal. This dude comes out of the bathroom. He's all, "What's up, man? I'm Jamal." He was Asian as shit.
His buddy Rogan even thought it was bad.
The first
Okay.
one, I would have probably tried to talk you out of it, but I already talked you out of fighting.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't talk him out of this too.
Rogan admitting years later that
My
he
guy,
should have
he
talked
should've.
Brendan out of doing this special, but didn't, kind of tells you all you need to know. I'm not the comedy police. I'm not going to tell you what's funny and what isn't. So
That's
through the
true.
clips in
Me
this
either.
video or on your own time, you can decide whether he's funny or not. However, filming a special is a big moment for a comedian's career. Most comedians are hustling clubs and working on material for a decade before ever releasing something permanent. Every artist makes a bad song. Every painter has a bad piece. Every comedian has a bad joke. It takes
Oh my
years
gosh.
and years to perfect
Chris Rock joke wasn't bad. It wasn't that bad.
a craft. Not even perfect, but just make something really solid. By comparison, Tom Segura started doing comedy around 2001 after graduating college. He did his first televised set in 2007 on Comedy Central and didn't film a special until 2010, 9
Wow.
years after starting. Bill Burr started comedy in
Ooh, okay.
1992,
9 years.
recorded his first special in 2003, 11 years later. Kevin Hart started comedy in college around 2000, didn't film his first special until 2009, 9 years after starting.
This is one of my favorite stand-ups. That and Cat Williams, The Pimp Chronicles. They're amazing.
Brendan filmed his special just 2 years after starting comedy. He could have just done his tours and made those fans happy who were purchasing tickets to see him live. But once you put out a special, you are going to be subject to criticism,
Damn,
and
this
he
sucked.
was not ready
His
for that.
MMA
He
career
bribed
was
his
funnier.
fans for reviews of his special. Today through the end of the week, if you
Wow.
follow the link below and leave the kind of review Brendan deserves for You'd Be Surprised, you will receive a one-time coupon for 50% off your entire Pure Spectrum order. They left reviews all right. 1.5 out of 10 stars was the average rating of his special. Now he had to
Yeesh.
discount his CBD oil to a bunch of people that hated his work. You could argue, okay, it's just a bunch of people hating on him, trolling, and being overly harsh because he's popular. I mean, that's definitely what Brendan thinks.
If it's a hater, if it's, a YouTuber talking shit, you can do that. You can criticize my comedy. A lion doesn't care what the sheep say. These people are just sheeps.
Yeah.
It's just this sheep mentality. It's this loser mentality.
Other than a few rude
What?
comments, this was the first backlash Brendan really got. His comedian friends gassed him up, told him he was hilarious, and that stand-up was his future, but the fans saw him differently.
Maybe, yeah, I feel like he just rushed too fast to, instead of doing some solid grass work and just, because, like all those comedians, like he mentioned, had like 5+ years of like grass work and like just, taking it easy, making sure they hone their skills. Brendan released his in 2 years. That Rogan should have told him like, all right, chill, like you're funny, but know your niche when it comes to the comedy.
It got even worse. The Fighter and the Kids subreddit was once a place for people to come and discuss all things comedy and sports. It became the community center to troll Schaub. All the popular posts were videos of him slurring his words, interrupting people, lying, telling bad jokes. It got so deep with inside jokes that they had to get organized. They created an extensive and extremely impressive archive of the history of how the
It
forum was
is.
created. They defined his idiotic ideals as Schaubisms, which is something that Brendan Schaub says often that doesn't make any sense, yet he continues to say it.
If this is a big fight stew, company stew, I should say this big vat of stew. I want that soup. I want that big ass stew. Just
Why stew? Granted, I can't think of anything myself right now, but stew is not it, man.
ships are too sailing in the night.
He interrupted people, told obvious lies, couldn't speak properly, and made a bunch of bad jokes and often had terrible takes.
You realize like that's not sustainable.
I don't know if
But
that
a
ever
sweet
goes
potato,
away.
you're like learning how to.
I don't know if it ever goes away. I always have it. It's just controlling the monster. For me, especially coming to comedy, not every.
Bro, come on, don't speak over it. Like someone, just let someone. I hate when when someone's trying to make a point, and they let you finish, but out of nowhere you just like. You still feel like you have more when you have more to say. Like you talk over that person that gave you like, your stage to speak. I hate when people do that. Like when you speak over people, it's so frustrating.
It was nice to me, man.
And then what is the thing that surprised you the most about doing stand-up that you didn't expect?
I would say how nice everybody is. When I trained with, ask me how I'm doing.
How are you doing, man?
I'm chill like a turkey after Thanksgiving. We get it, UFC Tonight Fox. You're not racist. We get it. You have an all-black panel. We get it.
The community called themselves Homeless Cats because Brendan views internet trolls as being worthless, like homeless people or cats.
The people
Homeless
that are
cats.
negative or are on forums and create troll accounts. I view those people the same I'd view a homeless guy critiquing my art or critiquing my set or critiquing a podcast. They do not matter.
They even type their comments in Shaubinese, which is the variation of the English language spoken by Brendan Schaub. Brendan claimed he didn't care about the people who hated on him, that they were just miserable people who were jealous of his success.
You guys know me. I don't really engage with haters.
And while some of that may be true,
Haters.
it's very obvious he did care.
I know I look like this stuff doesn't bother me. It hurts my feelings, man. It always has.
Some people agree with Schaub that the Reddit users are just people obsessed with bullying him. Some people say Brendan is a bully himself,
I threatened to beat up a guy at a coffee shop.
and he can't handle when someone
Why?
does it back to him.
No, that DeSantis 2024?
You eating a donut or you eating cheese?
Well, whatever it is, you sound exactly the same as you do when you don't have that in your mouth.
Come on, Chris.
Ooh.
Chris,
Ow.
Sorry.
Chris, man, don't. He's sensitive about his.
But no, it's okay, but we gotta rib each other.
Others really don't care about Schaub specifically. They just like the community aspect, memes and harmless trolling that comes with the fighter and the kid subreddit. It got better for a little bit. The King and the Sting podcast became a saving grace for Brendan. Him and Theo were a good pair, mostly
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they would just
I
make
love
fun of
King
each
and the
other and
Sting.
lean into their own stupidity.
You look like fucking Wyatt Slurp, bro. You look like a cop at a freaking bathhouse, dude.
You look like a DJ at a rave, fucking dip slow.
Plus, Theo is so
Yeah.
charming, fans could listen to him talk to anyone, including just a random plumber.
Just happy to talk to a plumber, man, because I don't know anything really about plumbing.
Oh, yeah, ask away.
But then came the downfall of the Fighter and the Kid
Always Theo.
podcast. It actually started with their good friend and fellow comedian Chris D'Elia. D'Elia had multiple public accusations of sexual
Ooh,
assault
yeah, I
and
remember
grooming
this.
underage girls in June of 2020, which consisted of him texting, flirting, trying to meet up with.
I remember there was a clip of him like when he found out that you could save Snapchats, I think. He was just like, huh? You can do what?
And potentially be
I mean,
intimate
what a
with women
shot
who
to
were
the
under
heart,
age of
huh?
18. He claimed that everything he did was legal and consensual.
Everything I've done has been legal and consensual, and that's true.
But social media, his comedy peers, and business partners did not agree with his actions morally, even if he wasn't technically being tried for a crime. They publicly denounced him and cut all ties with him. This was Brian and Brendan's reaction.
I have never seen or heard of him doing anything illegal. I don't know what to think, and I don't know what to say.
I'm as shocked as anyone. I'm hurt. I'm mad. I'm fucking mad, man. I'm mad at him.
Okay.
After this, they
Hang
moved
on.
on and continued just like nothing ever happened. But D'Elia fans were angry at the two. Bring Chris back with an epic podcast. You owe him that for the many times he's helped you guys. Those three were known for having great chemistry together. Well, more so Brian and Chris. Half of their most popular episodes featured Chris, so D'Elia fans felt that he was innocent and was a victim of cancel culture, and that these two should be his saving grace if they were his real friends. But it got worse. Brian Callen, just 1 month later, was accused of R-wording a former Mad TV cast member. Once the
Oh,
victim
shit.
came out, 3 other women shared their allegations against Callen, which including him groping, having affairs with, and soliciting sex for stage time.
This is me saying
Oh,
that I
that's
categorically and
the-
absolutely deny all the allegations against me.
Brendan didn't stop the podcast, not even for 1 week. He just kept bringing guest after guest. Every week, you didn't know who was going to be on. He dropped Brian and never talked about it, just said he was on vacation. Granted,
like, just say, hey, you should totally just say, hey, we're gonna take a quick step back. For the meantime, I'm just gonna have different guests. Like Brian needs his time. You know, it's simple. That's simple.
if the allegations were true, nobody would blame Brendan. The fans still felt betrayed. They said Callen was the whole reason Brendan had a podcast career, and they simply dealt with Brendan just to listen to Brian. Brendan got a new set, new co-stars, and never addressed anything. This comment section can't be disregarded. We want Brian back. Brian didn't make an appearance on the show until 6 months after the allegations. When he came back, views shot up. However, it was only temporary. He didn't become a consistent member of the podcast until a full year later. But it gets worse. Schaub would get
Oh
into
my
some
God.
juicy drama that was picked up by tabloids and YouTube channels
Oh,
outside
yes.
of the comedy world.
Here we go.
A situation that elevated all of this Schaub lore. The subreddit exploded. Schaub got even more famous, and the general YouTube viewer base started to dive deeper into this comedy podcast world. The situation involves Brendan, fellow comedian Bobby Lee, that he claims to be good friends with, and Bobby's wife, Kalila. Brendan, who is a married man with 2 kids, allegedly
Oh,
tried to make
beautiful
sexual
wife,
passes
man.
at Kalila. January
could you-
25th, on an episode of the Trash Tuesday
Come on, bro.
podcast, hosted by Kalila Kuhn, Annie Letterman, and Esther Pavitsky, Kalila tells a story about a nameless comic who is unfunny that hit on her years ago. Annie adds that this same person asked her to walk him to his truck, and in her words,
To what? Suck your dick like.
and yes, of course, the Reddit turned truck walk into a meme.
Walk me to my truck.
Drug walk.
Can't talk. Don't walk into my truck. Can I get a truck walk? Yeah.
The girls never mentioned his name, but they dropped.
Oh, the undefeated internet has struck again.
But they dropped
Wow.
some hints. Enough hints that the
That's a banger.
commenters were suspicious. The married comedian that hit on them is undoubtedly Brendan Schaub. Schaub claims he doesn't use social media. However, he heard about this situation. The next month, he allegedly texted Bobby and made a threat to him saying things like, "I'm finally going after anyone who harasses me online. I have spent $500,000 on lawyers." At this point, Schaub was getting a lot of heat for this online and was allegedly threatening Bobby and Kalila privately, saying, "I don't want to have to get nasty with her, but if I have no choice, I can play that game." Bobby and Schaub had made an agreement that Kalila would no longer be talking about him and that he needed to let it go. Following this, on another Trash Tuesday podcast, the girls had mentioned someone was trying to sue them, again alluding to Schaub without saying his name, which fueled more hate directed towards Brendan online. Now we are in late April. Schaub and Callan call Bobby to threaten him, saying that they have information that will end his career, and they accused him of being the mastermind behind all of the Reddit hate over the last 6 years.
What?
Bobby felt very threatened by this. He told Kalila what had happened.
But
Kalila
that
asked
doesn't make
Bobby for
sense.
Schaub's phone number, and now we have the first direct communication between Kalila and Schaub. Brendan had told Kalila that he has a team of private investigators looking into a video of child abuse on the subreddit. Apparently, the investigators had found a barrage of comments coming from one IP address that could be tracked back to a computer in Bobby and Kalila's home. These investigators also allegedly had 300 pages of evidence that would prove that either Bobby or Kalila was responsible for the 6 years of hate directed at Schaub and his family on Reddit. This conversation between the two was apparently very heated. They both described it as,
"The first time we talked was not really a talk. It was more
Both
like
of us
10
were
minutes of
shouting.
screaming."
Yes.
Schaub was under the impression that they had used his name in the original Trash Tuesday podcast. What's hilarious about this situation is Brendan allegedly hired private investigators and spent $500,000 on lawyers without ever actually watching the original Trash Tuesday clip.
Oh, wow. Just to hire the Pink Panther. And it turns out all you had to do was watch the clip.
Once he finally watched it, he called Kalila to apologize. The second conversation was much more productive after he realized they never said his name. Again, they both agreed to not speak about the situation publicly. There's a lot of he said, she said going on. Apparently, Schaub was slandering her name to Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz, in which he denies. So Kalila decided their agreement to not talk about each other was off.
We promised that this would never be brought up again, but then he went on Flagrant 2 and talked about it, so I was like, all right, deal's off.
Following this, Bobby and Kalila go on the H3H3 podcast to talk about the situation very bluntly, despite Bobby not wanting to. Ethan and Kalila were not very kind to Brendan on this podcast.
Dude, Brandon Schwab can't even read, bro. How the fuck that guy bringing 300 pages of anything?
Following this, they all decide to put the situation to rest and go on the Tiger Belly podcast to discuss.
Getting to a place where we can move forward from it, right?
Yeah, I don't.
And the situation does maybe kind of seem like superficial drama, but like I said before, this was like massive news for the past few months. So now Schaub's career is in a weird spot. He was liked in the beginning, got all the cosigns from the biggest comedians in the world. He basically had a wide open layup. All he had to do was just keep riding the wave. After the rough reception of his first special and he got dragged through the mud, you'd like to think that there would be some improvement. But the general consensus is that his second special, Gringo Papi, was worse, earning him a shocking 1.1 star review. His plan was to produce the special himself through his Thick Boy network and then sell it to a major network. But it seems no networks were interested because you can now watch it in its entirety on the Thick Boy YouTube channel. He still has his successful show Food Truck Diaries, which was...
I'm gonna check this out. Like, I wanted to watch like a bunch of like bad stand-up specials. Like, that's actually something I want to do, and I kind of do a little tier list about it.
Originally produced by Showtime, but is now made by his own Thick Boy network, Brendan will casually interview some of the biggest names in combat sports about their careers, past fights, and their future aspirations. The fight talk is always punctuated with a stop at a food truck to get something to eat, which always looks delicious, by the way, and back into fighting after a quick lunch. He also has his Tiger Thick whiskey brand that seems promising, despite having a terrible name. Today, Schaub has been canceling a lot of his stand-up shows, often canceling them with no real explanation or with a strange explanation.
Now that we're rescheduling San Francisco due to the
Crime Wave.
A lot of people online are speculating it's
Crime
because
Wave.
he's not selling enough tickets, which is certainly not far-fetched considering the reception of his specials. Comedians are speaking out against him.
If I was like his friend, I'd be like, I don't know if that's
Is that
ready.
ready?
You know, like,
Yeah.
that's all. I
Oh,
mean,
it wasn't ready.
Brendan Schaub used to be an MMA fighter, and now he's on Joe Rogan. Yeah, this nigga is awful. He was awful at MMA.
Damn, bro.
And he is awful at stand-up comedy. This nigga is terrible.
The Schaub trolling is at an all-time high.
That's a cold
so is this
dude.
really just an innocent man who
Ice
was
in his
coerced
vein
into
for that.
comedy by his famous best friend and now a victim of bullying? Or is he a full-blown narcissist, doing anything he can to further his own agenda, get next to anyone with power or fame, and once they are no longer useful to him, he moves on? I guess that's for you to decide.
Oh, damn it, I did it again. Anyway, I feel like it's the same thing when like, you know, in the clip where when Joe Rogan said, how would you do fighting King Velasquez? And his response, a lot of people will be surprised. That was his ego protecting him. And I feel like his ego is yet again protecting him from all this, like all the people criticizing him. And like, you know, obviously it was an ego boost when Joe Rogan and Brian Callen told him how fun that he was like a hilarious dude. And so he genuinely believes he's hilarious. I mean, sometimes you just gotta take a step back. Like, you know, the first special, it's the way it was received. There has to be truth within there. Like, it's not just haters. There has to be truth within. Like, okay, people think it's bad. I should just take a step back and, you know, work on my craft, hone my skills and what areas I'm funny at. You should have just, you know, led with that. But yeah, his ego, I feel like his ego is protecting him, and he doesn't want to, you know, to give anyone the satisfaction